Captain Alisha Varma, a celebrated Indian pilot admired across the skies, fell into a secret affair with Sheikh Amir Al Fahd, a powerful Dubai royal whose charm masked a deadly secret. When betrayal left her infected and broken, she turned her pain into vengeance, using her loyal co-pilot, Rehan Siddiqui, as an unsuspecting weapon in a chilling plan that would shock two nations and leave a trail of guilt written in blood. Captain Alisha Varma was the face of modern Indian aviation, young, fearless, and impossibly composed. At just 32, she had achieved what many in her field could only dream of. Her sharp uniform, calm demeanor, and flawless flight records made her a legend among her peers. Newspapers called her the Sky Queen of India, a symbol of progress in a male-dominated profession. Every photograph of her stepping off a jet exuded confidence, the smile of a woman who had conquered the clouds. Yet behind that radiant image there was a loneliness that even altitude couldn't lift. Her success had come with sacrifices few could understand. Alisha had spent her 20s climbing through layers of exhaustion and isolation. The long hours, endless travel, and pressure to prove herself left little room for personal life. Relationships never lasted. Friends drifted away. Her apartment in Mumbai was more a stopover than a home, filled with unopened mail and fading bouquets from admirers. She often stared at the skyline through her window at night, wondering if she had mistaken ambition for happiness. The world adored her, but no one truly knew her. On one of her flights to Dubai, fate introduced her to the man who would change everything. Sheikh Amir Al Fahd boarded her aircraft as a first-class passenger, surrounded by his security team and an aura of power that made everyone step aside. The Sheikh was known throughout the region, a royal businessman, collector of luxury, and a man whose charm could melt the hardest faces. Alisha only noticed him in passing during boarding, unaware that he had already noticed her, long before she even looked up. When the flight landed in Dubai, she received a discreet invitation, a gold-trimmed card bearing the royal insignia, thanking her for her professionalism and inviting her to an exclusive dinner. At first she laughed it off. Pilots weren't supposed to mingle with passengers, let alone royals. But curiosity has its own gravity. One dinner led to another, and before long Alisha found herself in a world of extravagance that few outsiders ever saw. Private yachts, candlelit rooftops, and secret desert getaways became her new normal. Sheikh Amir showered her with rare jewelry, designer clothes, and promises of a life beyond duty. He spoke of her as if she were a priceless possession, and though part of her resisted the attention, another part felt alive for the first time. For years she had been admired professionally but never desired so intensely. The affair grew quickly, hidden behind tinted car windows and private jet trips to secluded villas. In his presence, she felt invincible, like she had finally broken free from the suffocating boundaries of her life. But the deeper she fell into his world, the more she began to see its shadows. There were rules, unspoken and strict. Calls had to be answered at once. Appearances had to be maintained. No questions were allowed about his personal affairs or his other companions. His charm sometimes faded into cold silence, and his generosity began to feel like control. Yet Alisha couldn't walk away. She was addicted to the illusion, the taste of power, the feeling of being wanted by someone untouchable. Weeks turned into months. Her colleagues noticed her glow, but never dared to ask. Rumors began to whisper across the airline's corridors about her luxury watch, her sudden Dubai stopovers, the mysterious gifts she never explained. Alisha brushed it all aside, convincing herself she could balance both worlds, her duty in the skies and her secret on the ground. Late one night, as her jet cruised through a velvet sky over the Arabian Sea, she gazed at the horizon and felt an unease she couldn't name. Something inside her whispered that this affair was more than a secret. It was a trap, but she silenced the thought and tightened her seatbelt, convincing herself that love, or whatever this was, would protect her. She didn't know that high above the clouds, she was already flying toward the darkest turbulence of her life, one that would shatter everything she believed about loyalty, trust, and survival. The affair between Captain Alisha Varma and Sheikh Amir Al Fahd deepened with every visit, binding her to a world she barely understood. His life moved in quiet luxury and hidden power, a kingdom where every secret was protected by wealth. For Alisha, each return to Dubai felt like slipping into another reality, one where her uniform no longer defined her, and her choices were guided by emotion, not discipline. The Sheikh's attention was intoxicating, his words smooth and possessive. He praised her achievements and promised her a life where she would never have to fly again, where she could live in ease surrounded by gold and silence. But what began as a thrilling escape soon started to feel suffocating. Alicia noticed how the Sheikh's kindness shifted depending on her obedience. He became controlling, dictating her outfits, her travel plans, even her meals. His eyes followed her every move, and she began to realize she was less a lover and more a prized possession. The glamour of his world was lined with invisible bars. Still, she tried to convince herself that this was love, the kind that required sacrifice, secrecy, and surrender. The first signs of something darker appeared during one of her mandatory medical checkups for flight renewal. It was a routine process she had undergone dozens of times. But a week after her tests, the clinic called her back urgently. The doctor's face was pale, voice steady yet trembling as he told her the results. Alicia had tested positive for HIV. For a moment, her world froze. The room spun, and she felt her body go cold as though gravity had abandoned her. She sat in silence, unable to speak, unable to believe. Her mind raced through every possibility, every contact, every memory. There was no explanation that made sense, except one. The Sheikh. He was the only one she had been intimate with in months. Her trust had been absolute, her belief in his power and protection unshakable. Now it all collapsed in one instant of brutal clarity. She returned to her apartment that night and stared at herself in the mirror, searching for signs of the disease that now lived within her. Her reflection looked strong, beautiful, and unbroken, but inside, she felt ruined. She confronted the Sheikh in private days later, meeting him in one of his secluded villas. He listened to her trembling voice, then brushed it off with calm indifference. He spoke as though the matter was trivial, even implying she must have caught it elsewhere. His denial cut deeper than any physical wound. Alicia realized in that moment that she had been nothing more than a distraction, a disposable secret in his endless list of luxuries. Her tears, her fear, her humanity meant nothing to him. The man who once promised her the world had given her a death sentence. In the weeks that followed, Alicia withdrew from everyone. Her performance at work remained flawless, but behind the confident smile was a woman spiraling into despair. She learned everything about her condition, the treatments, the statistics, the stigma. Each fact only fed her fury. She felt betrayed not only by him but by fate itself. Every night she replayed the same thought, how someone so powerful could destroy another person's life without consequence. Gradually, her grief began to harden into something else. The sorrow turned to rage, and the rage to resolve. She couldn't undo what was done, but she could make him feel what she felt, helpless, deceived, and forever marked. She began to study his patterns again, the people close to him, the pilots, the friends, the ones who could be reached without suspicion. Her mind became a machine of quiet planning, working beneath the calm surface of her daily life. In public, she remained the composed captain, but behind her calm eyes a storm had begun. Alicia Varma was no longer the ambitious pilot who once flew to prove her worth. She was now a woman with nothing left to lose, and that made her more dangerous than anyone could imagine. The betrayal that had infected her blood was now fueling her soul, and she was ready to make someone, anyone, pay the price for it. Returning to work after her diagnosis felt like stepping onto a stage where every smile was an act. Captain Alicia Varma forced herself to remain composed, hiding the sickness that lived quietly within her. The airline's schedule became both her refuge and her disguise. Each takeoff and landing gave her a sense of control she no longer felt in her personal life. The routine steadied her, the pre-flight checks, the sound of the engines, the mechanical rhythm of aviation. But beneath that calm surface, her mind never stopped racing. Every flight to Dubai brought back flashes of the Sheikh's indifference, the way he had dismissed her pain as though it were nothing. That memory festered until it turned into pure venom. Her new co-pilot was First Officer Rehan Siddiqui, a man whose devotion to aviation bordered on obsession. At 29, he was eager to impress, always punctual, polite, and almost too attentive. He looked up to Alicia as a mentor, shadowing her every move in the cockpit. To him, she was perfection, the woman who had everything he wanted to be. But what started as admiration began to twist into fascination. He followed her outside of work, learned her habits, her favorite coffee shop, even the hotel floor she preferred during overnight stays. He was drawn to her loneliness, sensing it behind her professional armor. Alicia noticed his attention but didn't mind it at first. His loyalty made her work easier, and his quiet nature didn't threaten her. Yet over time, she began to see something useful in his devotion. Rehan was young, naive, and hopelessly infatuated. The kind of man who could be led anywhere if she played her cards right. Her revenge against the Sheikh was burning hotter every day, but it needed precision. She couldn't touch him directly. His security, his influence, and his world were untouchable. But she could inflict pain in another way. By passing on the curse that had been forced upon her, she began to see her infection not just as a disease, but as a weapon. Alicia started softening her demeanor around Rehan. She smiled more often, let her gaze linger, dropped hints of affection that kept him guessing. The distance between them began to blur. During flights, she would lean closer when checking instruments, her perfume mixing with the sterile scent of the cockpit. Rehan felt seen for the first time, convinced their bond was something special. She began inviting him for casual dinners after flights, sharing half-truths about her life. The loneliness, the betrayals, the exhaustion. Each confession made him feel closer, more trusted. Rehan mistook her calculated warmth for genuine connection. He didn't see the darkness beneath her calm, the way she watched him with cold determination while pretending to laugh at his jokes. She was studying him the way she studied flight plans. Every weakness, every blind spot. The closer he got, the more her plan began to take shape. She had no desire for love anymore, only balance. The Sheikh had infected her body. Now she would infect the world that surrounded him. Weeks turned into months, and their closeness became the subject of whispers among the crew. Some assumed they were secretly involved, others dismissed it as professional trust. Alicia never confirmed or denied anything, letting the rumors serve as camouflage. Her charm returned, but this time it had purpose. The pain inside her no longer made her weak. It made her precise. Every gesture, every word, every lingering glance was part of her silent vengeance. Rehan remained unaware of what he had stepped into. To him, this was a story of two pilots finding comfort in each other's company. To her, it was the beginning of a deadly transaction. When she looked at him, she didn't see a colleague or a lover. She saw a target. And though she still carried fragments of guilt, the image of the Sheikh's face, cold and unbothered, erased every hesitation. Alicia's revenge was no longer just an idea. It had become a mission. The cockpit that once symbolized her freedom was now a stage for her quiet war. Every mile they flew together brought her closer to the moment when she would act. And when that moment came, it would be as silent and irreversible as the disease hidden in her blood. The flight from Mumbai to Dubai was just another routine journey for the passengers, but for Captain Alicia Varma, it was the beginning of the final phase of her plan. She had rehearsed every detail in her mind, every possible outcome, every emotion she would allow herself to feel. The crew moved about the aircraft unaware of the quiet storm brewing behind her professional smile. Rehan Siddiqui, seated beside her in the cockpit, felt an unspoken tension in the air. He assumed it was exhaustion, but Alicia's silence carried purpose. She had decided that this flight would mark a turning point in both of their lives, one that would never be reversed. The night before the flight, Alicia had visited the old villa once owned by Sheikh Amir Al-Fahd, a place that held both memories and ghosts. It was the setting of her rise and her ruin. Now it would serve as the stage for her vengeance. She arranged everything perfectly, the timing of their layover, the excuse to meet there, and the atmosphere that would disarm Rehan completely. Her mind was cold and clear, no longer clouded by fear or hesitation. She was ready to do what she believed justice demanded, even if it meant crossing a line she could never return from. When the plane touched down in Dubai, Rehan felt thrilled to be spending time with her outside work. He had admired her from afar for months, and now she had invited him into a world he could only dream of. The villa was grand but eerily quiet, its marble halls filled with the echoes of the Sheikh's past. Alicia walked through it like a ghost reclaiming her space. She poured 2 glasses of wine and spoke softly about how empty her life had become, about the loneliness that followed her even at 30,000 feet. Rehan, overwhelmed by her vulnerability, saw this as a moment of connection. He didn't notice how controlled every move she made was, how every smile hid calculation. That night changed everything. What happened behind those closed doors would never be officially recorded, but its consequences were written into their blood. By morning, Rehan awoke with a strange calm, convinced that he had finally found love. Alicia, on the other hand, felt a dark satisfaction settle over her. It wasn't joy or relief. It was completion. The act was done, and her revenge had taken flight. She had given him what she carried, passing her curse into another body, ensuring that the cycle of betrayal would not end with her. The following days returned to normal, at least on the surface. They continued flying together, exchanging polite smiles in front of the crew. Rayhan, oblivious, grew more affectionate, unaware of the silent death now moving through his veins. Alicia kept her distance emotionally, watching his excitement fade over time. He started complaining of headaches, fatigue, and strange fevers. Doctors couldn't pinpoint the cause immediately. When the diagnosis finally came, his world fell apart. The virus had already spread too far, and the truth began to surface. During the investigation, Alicia maintained her calm, but before Dubai authorities could question her, she disappeared without warning. Her apartment was found empty, her car abandoned near the airport, and her uniform neatly folded on her bed. The airline suspended her indefinitely. Interpol issued a notice, yet every lead went cold. Some said she fled to Europe using forged documents, while others believed she had taken her own life out of guilt. For Rayhan, there was no recovery, only shock and confusion. He couldn't understand how the woman he worshipped had destroyed him. The story spread quietly among aviation circles, a whispered cautionary tale about love, betrayal, and trust. Alicia Varma became a name spoken with both admiration and fear. To some, she was a victim-turned-monster. To others, she was a woman driven beyond the limits of reason. The villa where it all happened remained locked and untouched, its silence thick with secrets. Somewhere far away, a woman who once ruled the skies watched the horizon, knowing that her revenge was complete, but her freedom was gone forever. Inspector Tariq Noor had seen many strange cases in his career, but the story of Captain Alicia Varma was unlike anything he had ever investigated. The evidence was fragmented, the witnesses unreliable, and the timeline blurred by secrecy and fear. Still, he was relentless. Dubai police had recovered traces of her life, phone records, security footage, and fragments of her journal, each piece painting a portrait of a woman consumed by pain and purpose. The disappearance of Alicia Varma had become more than a manhunt. It was a psychological puzzle, one where love, betrayal, and revenge had fused into a single tragedy. Through patient investigation, Tariq began to piece together her final days in Dubai. Surveillance footage showed her visiting the clinic where Sheikh Amir had once been treated. Records revealed that she had spent several hours in the archives, accessing files under a false name. That led Tariq to Dr. Lina Qureshi, a medical researcher known for her discretion. When questioned, Lina hesitated at first, but eventually revealed the truth that would tie every thread together. Sheikh Amir Al-Fad had been HIV positive for years, receiving confidential treatments under government protection. The disease had been contained, hidden from public record, and known only to a few doctors bound by silence. According to Lina, Alicia had likely discovered the truth when she accessed the Sheikh's file during her visit. The realization that he had known about his condition, and still chosen to endanger her, must have pushed her past the point of forgiveness. The revelation made Tariq pause. He could see her logic even if he couldn't condone her actions. A betrayal of that scale could destroy anyone's sense of morality. Still, what haunted him most was the precision of her revenge. It wasn't impulsive. It was planned like a flight path, calm, deliberate, and devastatingly effective. The Sheikh, despite the revelation, continued his life untouched by scandal. His influence protected him from legal exposure, and no charges were ever filed. He denied knowing Alicia personally, though his private security records suggested otherwise. The hypocrisy was glaring. A powerful man had infected her, escaped accountability, and watched from behind palace walls while the woman he destroyed became the world's villain. Tariq saw the injustice, but the law moved differently when wealth was involved. Months after Alicia's disappearance, a courier arrived at Dubai Police headquarters with an unmarked envelope. Inside was her pilot badge, perfectly polished, and a handwritten note that read, "You can't fly away from guilt." The message was simple, haunting, and full of resignation. Forensic testing confirmed that the DNA on the paper belonged to Alicia Varma. Yet, there was no indication of where it had been sent from. Some believed she was still alive, hiding under a new identity somewhere in Europe or Southeast Asia. Others insisted she had taken her life and that the letter was her final confession, mailed before her death. Inspector Tariq filed the case under unresolved, but he continued to study her life long after the headlines faded. The more he learned, the more he saw her not as a monster, but as a mirror of the society that failed her. She was a woman who had once represented progress, strong, independent, admired. But the moment she fell victim to a powerful man's deceit, her story was rewritten as scandal. The world remembered her disease, not her despair. They spoke of her crime but ignored the crime done to her first. Over time, the legend of Captain Alicia Varma grew. Pilots whispered her name as a cautionary tale about secrets carried above the clouds. Online forums speculated about her whereabouts, some claiming sightings in Paris, others in Bali. But no photograph, no confirmation ever surfaced. The badge and the note remained locked in an evidence drawer, symbols of a mystery that refused to fade. For Sheikh Amir, life continued untouched until one quiet evening when he collapsed during a private event. He was rushed to the hospital, and though the official statement listed heart failure as the cause, insiders whispered of complications related to his illness. In the end, his power couldn't save him from the disease he had unleashed. Somewhere far away, perhaps on a beach or in a nameless city, a woman might have watched the news, eyes calm, heart untroubled. Maybe it was her. Maybe it wasn't. But the story of Captain Alicia Varma lived on, not just as a tale of revenge, but as a warning about what happens when betrayal turns love into a weapon. In the silence of the skies she once ruled, her ghost still lingered, flying endlessly between justice and damnation.